Now, I talked last night about the mid-year budget update about how your income was in reality going backwards, even though your wage might have gone up, because the government is taking more income tax than it used to. Of course, it's just another thing that contributes to the cost of living crisis. And there was an extraordinary report today from the Western Australian Council of Social Services that shows for the first time ever a dual income family with 2 kids in WA, a pretty standard family, cannot make ends meet. Now, they've been doing this report for 17 years, and it's the first time that dual income families have come out behind. It found that household budgets for 2-parent families with an after-tax income of $86,245, so that'd probably be a 1-parent full-time, 1-parent part-time situation in most cases, their household expenses increased by $167.23 a week, which is $8,696 a year, which is far more than most people have taken home in pay increases this year. About $1,660 in and $1,720 out every week, which puts them roughly $60 in the red, even after state and federal government subsidies are taken into account. Now, 3 years ago, they were $100.79 ahead each week. 2 years ago, it was $45.09. Single-parent families were $94 in the red every week this year. In fact, the only group that came out marginally ahead were aged pensioners, believe it or not, who owned their own home outright, and there's the key. Families are actually going backwards faster than unemployed people on welfare, for heaven's sake. And that's just Western Australia. I mean, you can imagine it'll be pretty much the same, if not worse, across the rest of the country. God knows how a family in Sydney, for instance, is meant to get by. How quickly we have gone from a situation where a home with a backyard and a couple of kids was pretty much attainable for everyone, and you could do it even on one income. I mean, I'm only a young bloke, and I think about my situation growing up. My mother stayed at home during the week for most of my brother and my childhoods until we were old enough to fend for ourselves and get ourselves home from school or whatever. So she worked on Thursday nights and Saturdays during the day in retail. It would have been, I guess, about 12 or 13 hours a week. And I remember those Thursday nights well because that was designated as toasty night because Dad couldn't be bothered cooking. But I should clarify before I bag him out too much that he actually does the lion's share of the cooking in that household these days. And Dad always worked full time. He was a landscaper when I was really little, and then he became a council gardener, which he's been doing for nearly 20 years. So they were both on pretty modest incomes. They bought a house for less than $100,000 in 1997. I came along in 99. My brother was born in 02. 2 kids, 1 income with a bit of a top-up, a mortgage, 2 cars, 2 pets. You know, it's what I would call a pretty standard working-class upbringing. And we never really wanted for anything. I was aware that we didn't have lots of money, and I'm sure my parents made sacrifices along the way, but we never felt deprived of anything. We never went on overseas holidays or anything like that, but we always had plenty of presents at Christmas, and we had new computers, and we could do whatever sort of school activities or sports we wanted. Though that was more my brother. I tried cricket in year 4 and decided I was better in the stands after that. But the point is, when my parents had me 25 years ago, that was an entirely attainable life. I don't think they'd be able to do that if I was born today. They'd both have to go to work full time, and then I'd have to go to childcare, and I would have missed out on all that time that I had with my mother growing up. They could have both worked full time if they wanted to, but they made a decision not to because they didn't have to. Mum went back to work full time once we could fend for ourselves, and fair enough. But they made a decision that while we were young, they wanted a parent at home. Can a family make that decision these days, unless one of the parents is earning seriously good coin? Probably not. And that's a shame, because research shows that children with a stay-at-home parent fare better than those sent to childcare. A 2014 Stanford study of 68,000 children found that those with a parent at home had better academic results all the way through to high school. And of course, traditionally it's been a stay-at-home mum, but in this modern world, there's no reason it couldn't be a stay-at-home dad. But most families, they don't have that option anymore. We've gone from a country where a family can live on one income to a country where a family can barely live on two incomes. And yet Treasurer Jim Chalmers had the gall yesterday at the MyEFO update to say that the economy was growing and real wages were up.
We are on track for a soft landing in our economy. And you can see that right across the economic indicators that we are talking about today. The economy is growing, but slowly. Inflation is moderating. Real wages and real incomes are growing. Unemployment is low. 1 million jobs have been created. Participation is around record highs. The gender pay gap has narrowed. Tax cuts and cost of living help is rolling out.
Well, that's cold comfort, as the Western Australian Council of Social Services quite clearly found in their report. And as for economic growth, this is the problem. The federal government wants both parents at work because it means they pay more tax. And of course, the worse the cost of living is, the more you have to work and the more tax they make. Now, in these discussions, I often come back to a speech John Howard gave in the Business in Europe luncheon in London in 2000. He said, "It's important for all of us, whether we are in business or in politics, all of us who are concerned about the future of our society and the cohesion of our society, whether it be in Australia or here in Britain, to remember the economic policy, however you define it and however you pursue it, is never some end in itself. That the purpose of economic policy is to produce a social dividend to achieve social goals. Personal contentment and human fulfilment and the stability and cohesion of society are the ultimate goals of sound economic policy." I mean, that was 24 years ago. He also described on many other occasions what he called the human dividend of economic policy. And when Howard launched his 2004 campaign 20 years ago, he said that running the economy well only has a purpose if it delivers a human dividend, if it delivers things for the Australian people. Well, it's not delivering personal contentment and human fulfilment anymore. It's not delivering a human dividend. You are now working to serve the economy rather than the economy working to serve you. Is it any wonder that the fertility rate in Australia is now 1.5 children per woman? And no, that doesn't mean that she's having half a child. It means that we're not replacing ourselves because we can't afford to. I mean, to want to have children, you have to feel secure. And a lot of people just don't have that security anymore. And those who do have children are increasingly paying more with less.